The TG University Hospital was founded in Moriocho in 1911, and over the years has become a beacon of benevolence and healing. And among its staff of 220 different doctors, only one of them has taken its founding message to heart. But their perfectionist mentality has twisted their noble intentions into something rather inhuman. Which makes sense, because he himself isn't. I'm of course talking about the gallant gravel-grinding gentleman gifting gnarly goodwill, Wu Tomoki, and his stand, Dr. Wu. Wu Tomoki is a high-ranking member of the Locacaca organization and one of the final 4 rock-human antagonists of Part A. He acts as a major threat during the Dr. Wu and Awaken 3 Leaves arc of JoJolion, and is the second-to-last arc antagonist, as following his defeat, we enter into the long Wonder of You arc. His role within the organization was research and development, specifically focusing on how to use the Locacaca as a method of treating ailments, though his mindset as a perfectionist led him to viewing any result which cured his patients to be the correct one, no matter how gruesome the cost. Though before we get too into that, let's discuss the meaning behind his name and design. Wu Tomoki is a pretty straightforward name when it comes to JoJo. Though before I mention the obvious reference, I wanted to dissect his given name, Tomoki, which is comprised of the characters for companion or partner and perseverance or resolve. The partner or companion part of his name could be in relation to how he is part of an organization, specifically the Locacaca organization, which when you combine with the perseverance part of his name could be in reference to his iron will in achieving his goal and his perfectionist mindset when it comes to using the Locacaca as medicine, in comparison to his other teammates, with Wu even being able to make gruesome sacrifices in the name of progress. Though the more direct reference is found in his family name, Wu, which, while being made of the kanji that translates directly to feather, was also likely chosen because of the Steely Dan song Dr. Wu, which happens to also be the name of his stand. Now, Dr. Wu is a rather strange stand, as it has no main form of its own. Instead, it's an integrated stand, meaning its ability is tied to the user's own body. Now, the one major ability of Dr. Wu is gravel shifting. How gravel shifting works is Wu Tomoki can break his body down into gravel-sized fragments, and float along the air's current of his given location. And outside of that, the fragmented forms actually have very little power on their own, but they can be controlled independently by Wu, and be reassembled together to reform him. But he does this by selecting one fragment as the core, and pulling the others towards it. And this core selecting aspect of his ability can be used to do a number of different things, such as allowing him to scrape together large fragments to create a terrible noise which distracts or disorients his target. And then, when they are distracted, the large fragments will try to embed themselves into a target and begin to fuse with their body parts. And thanks to his expert knowledge of the human body, Wu can use this aspect of his ability to not only paralyze his targets, but his stand can also begin to puppet them, and in some cases puppet their stands as well. Along with this, his fragmented form can also cause an allergic reaction in a target, resulting in them being incapacitated by their allergies. Along with this, he can also carry other substances with his gravel by grinding them up into his separated form, an example of this being Locacaca chunks or sleeping pills. But most importantly, what makes Dr. Wu so strong in the hands of Tomoki is it allows him to use the Locacaca on people without fear of damaging their brains. As when operating on someone, Tomoki will break himself down and enter his patient's body, blocking off any pathway to the brain during the equivalent exchange process. This has allowed Tomoki a great success rate when it comes to abusing the Locacaca's equivalent exchange properties. Now, the name Dr. Wu, as I mentioned, comes from a Steely Dan song, Dr. Wu, which was on the 1975 album Katie Lied, the 4th studio album released by the band, but the first studio album after the original members disbanded. The name of the album actually is a double pun, first in reference to its album art, which features a singing cricket, or a katydid, in the center. Along with it, the name comes specifically as a paraphrase of a lyric from the song Dr. Wu, being Katie lies, you can see it in her eyes. And speaking of the album cover itself, I believe that the cricket on the cover of the album might be the inspiration inspiration for Wu Tomoki's design, as the antennas of the katydid are represented by Wu's spiky bangs, and in the same topic, the weird dots along the side of his head seem to match a visual representation of gravel, so I just thought I would point that out, because I know his haircut is one of the weirdest parts about his character. Now, the song Dr. Wu is supposedly about the uneasy relationship between a patient and doctor, and how people will put their faith in doctors, yet they'll still abuse their power for their own gain, and become dangerous. At least according to Walter Becker, a member of the band at the time that the song was written, which not only matches up with Araki's own paranoia involving doctors and the medical practice altogether that is reiterated into JoJo, but more specifically JoJolion, as the second act antagonists are all doctors, and more specifically, Wu Tomoki exists in this specific relationship with his patients, as Mitsuba laid all of her trust into him and he abused that trust for his own benefit. As from Wu's perspective, everything that he has done is for the greater good, even claiming that he does wish to cure all of his patients equally, no matter how minor the ailments. But in reality, Wu's whole perspective comes down to the ends justify the means, as Tomoki believes that he is a true perfectionist who has never failed once in his life, and he's done this by avoiding all elements of failure in his life. This mindset has bred an ego which disguises itself as altruism, as Wu cannot accept that his viewpoint is wrong. Thus, when Wu performs an equivalent exchange on a patient, no matter what they lose in the exchange, as long as the ailment is treated, then that means he was successful, be it either weakening part of the body to make another part more beautiful, or trading the life of an unborn child to completely rejuvenate a body. To him, these results are equal and just. Wu also dresses in a way that matches his sort of ego and achievements, wearing multiple name tags with the word doctor written on them, which of course is in reference to Dr. Wu, but also it relates to how Tomoki has trained in multiple medical professions to become an expert on it. He is a doctor in many different fields, be it cosmetic, gynecology, or orthopedic. One of the coolest parts of the Wu Tomoki fight is its role as a Josuke light fight, where the power levels of the fight are actually rather low, and the users are the true combatants, as Wu's knowledge of his environment, along with the knowledge of human anatomy and how the Locacaca works, plays a major role in the fight's pacing. And when Josuke finally does enter the battle, he's able to solve the problem rather quickly in almost one attack, because Soft and Wet hard countered Dr. Wu. Along with this, Wu Tomoki is a character that we actually got to see behind the curtain of at the Hidehiko Araki JoJo art exhibit Ripples of Adventure, a special exhibit that was originally held from August 24th to October 1st in 2018 in Tokyo. And at this exhibit, Wu Tomoki's character sheet along with his concept sketch was on display for the world to see. And what's really cool about this in retrospect is that he had just debuted in the manga at this time as well, meaning that he was brand new to all audiences and Araki just put him out there like this. It's probably one of the best examples we have of a character sheet to character publishing so that we know what the process kind of looks like. Though I should also mention that Mitsuba was also on display in a similar way next to him, but Mitsuba has been around since the beginning of the series, so it was kind of a nice retrospective of some that we had from the beginning of the series on display next to someone who was just brand new. Now, Wu Tomoki is certainly a strange character, and Araki really went the extra mile in designing him, even though he knew he'd have limited screen time, as he has one of the more eye-catching appearances and one of the strangest habits, as Tomoki tends to eat a lot of nori on its own in large quantities and drink silicone-infused water, which, in the case of the nori, demonstrates the biological difference between rock humans and regular humans, as nori is considered toxic if consumed in large quantities on its own. His research on the Locacaca is also rather vital for the reader's understanding of its power, and on paper he could be considered a pretty good person. Araki created a character who had a decent moral conundrum of, do we allow this person to continue his research because it could further medical science with the sacrificing of a couple human lives? He has in a way created a perfect technique that is a surefire solution to any illness that comes his way. Be it cancer or plastic surgery, Wu can cure them all. Well, except viruses, but he can cure the ailments that come with those viruses. Though due to this position of power, his willingness to take advantage of the trust of his patients, it marks him as a villain in the world of JoJo in a similar way to why Araki considers Funny Valentine a villain. And just goes to show that Araki hasn't lost his writing chops. Even a character as insignificant as Dr. Wu can create an interesting moral conundrum. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more videos like it in the future, I have a Patreon at patreon.com/MendyNotTheBadGuy. And if you want a cure-all much like the Locacaca, you can find one in your copy of Shimonetta, A Boring World Where the Concept of Dirty Jokes Doesn't Exist at buyshimonetta.com.